Welcome back to the Cannabis Podcast, and Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to you, Phillip James Latham, and thanks for being our first guest of the new year. And how was everything for you during the holidays, man?
Happy New Year. Happy to be here. Hope you had a great holiday as well. My Christmas and New Year's was pretty cool. Had my family in town from kind of all over the country, from the South, from the East Coast, came down from California in the North. So it was a packed house, and my wife's family is all Italian. So we did the traditional Italian thing on Christmas Eve and had the seven fishes and stuff. My daughter
Right.
got a, cool Christmas present, so she got a little kitchenette thing. So she's been oogling and eyeing over this whole past couple weeks, which is fun to see her
Cool.
start to kind of like, try and mimic us making food and stuff for her. So it's really cool. But yeah, starting 26 off strong. Actually have a project coming out later this month, so excited to see how that rolls out. And as you know, because I've mentioned it on every show we've done, is the Bigfoot thing's still trucking along. So yeah, man, it's good.
Good. Great to hear. And again, everybody, thanks for joining us. Hit the like, share, and subscribe button. Give him a follow. And I want to talk about the big news of 2025 and the big news of what I think is going to be 2026. 2025, obviously, the rescheduling that President Trump did, huge, biggest change in cannabis policy, whether it's legal or not, biggest change in policy in 50, 60 years. And then in 2026, the Supreme Court is going to decide on can cannabis users own firearms? And that's going to come somewhere near the end of summer, probably fall time, I would guess. And that's going to be interesting. So those are the two things I have in mind, and I know there's some news going on, and yeah, we'll get into that, man. What do you think
Sounds
about the
good.
cannabis reschedule? And let's start there from 2025, and how do you think it's going to play out going forward?
I'd say overall, very much a net positive in terms of what it means for kind of the industry, for, businesses, what it means for potentially banking and the financial aspects of the whole industry. I think it's a really positive step in the right direction, but, it obviously always comes with, the additional bureaucratic red tape that's going to go along with any of the decisions like that. So, I know rescheduling on its face, like I said, great thing. But, timeline, what it ultimately means, federal versus state, all of those things are kind of remaining to be seen to a certain degree. But yeah, I think, opening it up to be able to allow for institutions to research the plant more, in depth than they have been able to in the past, having Ole Miss be the only, federally recognized, commercial
Which
or
they
not,
lost their
not even commercial.
license.
Yeah, I was just gonna say they lost, they it rescheduled and then they lose their license. But then I was
Talk
also
about a 1-2 punch.
right. But then I also see, the Alabama organizations are also starting to now be allowed to file for, uh, what is it called, licenses and stuff,
Hmm.
to be able to start research, to, start commercializing things in their own regard. So, I think west to east, east to west, north to south. I think generally speaking, cannabis is obviously becoming more, you know, well known, better understood. It sounds like more of the congressional representatives of, all the respective states are actually kind of beginning to understand the positive applications that the plant has, at least medically at this point. If we wanted to talk about the industrial applications, we can get into that in terms of like hemp and stuff. But I think the concentration right now is definitely more in the, weed versus the pharmaceuticals kind of push and pull dynamic.
And they're, I mean, well said. And they're also out of options.
Yeah.
Um, there's there's really no other industries left to extract everything from. Everything's
Well, now they're
saturated.
gonna now they're gonna do it with everything. Everything's gonna
Right.
become, tokenized, and you're gonna
Yep.
be able to buy into anything at a, point oh 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 one ownership per stake
Because that's how much your
for
dollar's worth. And
oh man, we don't need
you
to get
know, not
we
to
don't
we
need to
don't
go into
not to
that.
digress into that,
Oh
but we'll stick with the plant today. And
yeah.
but it all is kind of related because all these places that are in conflict with us right now, they're talking about drugs and the drug trade. And then Trump just did a drug executive action. So there is correlation, and then it's allowing people for everyone that didn't know, it allows tax write-offs and businesses to do more stuff. It doesn't change their banking status because the safe banking thing didn't pass. It was just an executive order. It doesn't do anything about criminal justice. It doesn't do any of that stuff. And it is still in the Controlled Substances Act as illegal. Hemp was removed from that in 2018 through the Farm Bill, and they knew exactly what they were doing. And so, in order to make cannabis legal, they have to remove it from the controls or repeal the Controlled Substances Act, which who knows who knows if
Yeah,
anything's going to be done in any regard in anything in this Congress. So that it's going to be interesting because now that leads into the Supreme Court ruling next year of cannabis and firearms and drugs. Can drug users use firearms? Now it's talking about cannabis, but is it talking about pills too? Is what's it talking about? So
right. Yep. Well, I actually just saw something recently, just kind of speaking along these same lines. It was a guy in the hemp industry who I've been in touch with for a little while, but he actually posted, a little blog post or whatever. He was talking about, the fact that when you when you decarboxylate cannabis or hemp, you actually take away a lot of the cannabinoids that are present, in a whole plant. So when, companies are advertising that they're full spectrum or whole plant, products, in reality, you've actually taken away a significant potentially proportion of the cannabinoids that are generally present in, the base plant matter, and, plant material. But everybody obviously is getting more familiar with is essentially like the main two cannabinoids, THC and CBD. While they have their
yeah.
great properties, there is the potential that you aren't actually getting the, quote unquote full entourage effect if you are already, kind of cutting the plant off at its knees by taking away a whole proportion of cannabinoids that exists otherwise. I thought that was really interesting.
Now we're not doctors here, so this is not
Yeah.
medical advice and it's not financial advice if we ever talk about money. This
Nope.
is just entertainment purposes only. So don't take any medical advice, do your own research. And it is interesting that what is it? They're the Epidiolex, which is, have you ever heard of Epidiolex?
No.
If you wouldn't mind pulling that up, if you have a second. So Epidiolex was the first pharmaceutical, government approved pharmaceutical pill, synthetic CBD or synthetic THC. And this was years ago. And there's some people, families that are investors in this. I'm not going to mention the names. But you can just look at the holding sheet on the stock market and just it's public information. Just go look. Um, they were approved, I think, in UK for seizures. And what's
Yeah.
interesting is that by this being approved, you do a few things. You admit that this stuff has benefits and that you want to use it, but that you also aren't going to do it organically. You're going to use a synthetic version when they just banned
Hmm.
the synthetic versions here. So you're like, they're doing everything they can to dance around legalizing it because they
Yeah.
know, yeah, they're going to benefit it, but society at large will benefit more from it.
Interesting. Interesting. I mean,
So
so
if it,
go ahead.
no, go ahead, dude.
No, I was gonna kind of pivot into the whole other contradictory thing that I already had pulled up because if we're talking about
Yeah,
contradictions in the industry,
yeah, go
okay,
back.
so this was one thing that I had pulled up ready for
I
us to
just wanted
talk
to mention
about.
that so people knew about that.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So police sees record-breaking mountain of cannabis worth 24 million pounds of rural farm raid. I don't know if anybody in the
I can't
audience
see
has
it.
watched. Oh, you can't see it?
There we go. Now I can.
Okay. I don't know if anybody's in the audience has watched The Gentleman, either TV show or movie with Matthew McConaughey and the other pretty white guy. But anyways, I thought it was really funny that that show gained, rampant popularity here in the States and, was one of the big popular weed shows of the past, I don't know, 2 years or such. And then there's an article like this from, 2 hours ago and they're seizing millions and millions of pounds, pounds worth of cannabis. And then on the other side of that, you have an article like this that comes out, 2 days ago. Thousands of Brits prescribed super strength cannabis for mental health conditions, including anxiety and depression, with benefit claimants offered free consultations and discounts on their monthly weed prescriptions. What hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so funny to me that, we can have both of these things existing simultaneously. It's like there's legal enforcement of, saying it's bad and, we're criminalizing the production of the plant. Sorry, my cat keeps, wanting attention. I
I
know,
like your
buddy.
cat.
Yeah, he's a boss. He definitely tries to get what he wants,
Well,
but
dude,
he might step on my keyboard and make things not work properly. Um, but yeah,
welcome
just
anytime.
the fact that this is like continuing to go on. I mean, it happens in the States too, states versus federal in some dynamics, but I don't know. I just thought it was really funny. And then, speaking of, the contradictions again, Texas set to ban smokable cannabis as soon as January 25. Like, come on, man. We're moving into the age of, rescheduling and decriminalizing, and we have this kind of enforcement in a state like Texas, which is massive. And, I guess that there's pockets of, the more liberal minded of the population that I'm sure, consume their fair share, but they're going to ban
I've been,
smokable plant.
I've been
Come
talking to
on.
people about around this in Austin, and honestly, Austin's really the only kind of bluish area. Like Houston and Dallas,
Yeah.
everything else outside of Austin is
Yeah.
Texas. It's Republican, it's Texas.
Hmm.
And they just have two huge lobbies. Like the agriculture lobby is just massive here. And, you know, they're going to do everything they can to keep it in state, first off. And then, second off, I don't know if they want to ban smokables to force it into pill form. You know what I mean? If they force it into a pill form something else, then the pharmaceutical companies benefit from that. So, I mean, everything they're doing is benefiting the pharmaceutical companies because the countries that like Lebanon and other countries that legalized, they literally have earmarked their legal cannabis. You're not allowed to grow at home, just they're allowed, and they've earmarked it for pharmaceutical companies.
Hmm.
So even if they're legalizing around the world, it's not really necessarily benefiting the population. I mean, it's a net positive, but it's not having the maximum effect it could, at least not right
Yeah.
off the bat.
So this is actually it's interesting. So like, cannabis is in the title, but then even in the subtitle, they're talking about, the Texas hemp industry. And then
Scroll
throughout the
down a
whole thing,
little.
they're talking about, THC and hemp and, smokable stuff like that. Anyways, I'll just start reading the article. Smokable cannabis products sold legally across Texas could disappear by the end of the month under proposed state rule that would redefine how THC is measured and dramatically raise costs for hemp businesses. I mean, they're not just talking like a little bit of cost. Recall procedures and fee increases of roughly 10,000% for manufacturers and retailers. Annual fees for hemp manufacturers would jump from $250 to $25,000 per facility. Retailers would be required to pay $20,000 per location each year, up from the current $150 registration fee. Like these are just exorbitant increases. And then it says the proposed rule would still allow for edible hemp products like gummies and drinks containing Delta 9, Delta 8, and potent cannabinoids such as THCP. Again, I think this is ultimately because cannabis, marijuana is still illegal under state legalities,
And federal.
but well, yes, correct. But they're one of the states that's been skirting skirting the laws to a certain degree uh, through ex hemp extractions and just
Hmm.
making products from hemp rather than higher potency plant. Um,
The grift is
and
over.
the yeah, exactly. Like the loopholes closing essentially is what this sounds like.
Hmm.
Um, then da 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 da. State health officials drafted the new regulations in response to an executive order issued by government or Governor Greg Abbott on September 10th, directing state agencies to develop new rules governing what Texas calls, quote, consumable hemp products. The order followed a stalemate in the legislature where lawmakers failed to agree on whether to regulate mind-altering hemp compounds or attempt another outright ban. In June, Abbott vetoed an initial bill prohibiting THC products that had been championed by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Under Texas law, hemp is defined as cannabis containing no more than 0.3% delta 9 THC, the primary psychoactive compound in marijuana. That definition was adopted by state lawmakers in 2019 and closely mirrored federal legislation passed the year before. Um,
The
they
next
don't,
sentence is really important. Read that next
yeah,
sentence. Can you zoom in a little bit on that?
yep. Uh, Neither state nor federal law explicitly ban THCA, a naturally occurring cannabis compound that converts into Delta 9 THC when heated or smoked. Even in states where marijuana is legal, most of the Delta 9 THC in smokable cannabis starts as THCA. Literally a callback to what I just said a few minutes ago about, the decarboxylation process taking away a lot of these uh,
Hmm.
acidic cannabinoids. Um, the proposed
But
rules would include THCA amounts in the calculation of Delta 9 THC levels, a change that would effectively outlaw most smokable hemp products. So that's really the crux of the article right there.
they also know that it's coming from out of state.
Yeah.
So they're not, I mean, they're not dumb. I'm not saying they're the ones doing it or not doing it, but they know somebody's bringing in out of state stuff because in every smoke shop you go to, if you buy THCA or something like that, it has a Prop 65. A lot of times it has a Prop 65 warning on it. And that's
Yeah.
only in California.
So this is an interesting sentence. Several speakers accused the health department of exceeding its authority by attempting to redefine THCA as Delta
Yep.
9.
Hmm.
Again, when we're not having the specificity involved in the conversation that's required to understand the chemical makeup of this plant, you're not really
Hmm.
having a very well-informed conversation about it. So it's just like pe for people that love semantics, they also love to be very vague when, trying to regulate things and like,
And this is
what
written
things
by a
fall
lawyer, not a
under.
scientist.
For sure, for sure. Totally administrate or legislative functions, not administrative. Mm, da, da, da,
But
da.
see, hold on, go that I always love go to the last two paragraphs. That's all. A lot of the times, people, all you got to really do is go to the last couple paragraphs. They just kind of give it to you right there. The rest
Yeah,
of
there you go. Yeah. State health officials can revise the rules based on public feedback. The regulations could take effect as soon as January 25th, or the department could delay or phase in enforcement. The drafted rules would not affect the state's medical marijuana program, which was expanded in 2025 to allow for 15 dispensaries statewide, up from three. So they've 5x'd their dispensaries in a state that's the second largest in the country. Think about that for a moment. Uh, but I think, like
it's
you're
a,
saying, the most important is, they're not touching the medical industry because they can't. But like you're in Texas, so you'd probably know better than me. How hard is it to get a medical, permit to go and buy?
so ask ChatGPT that and see what it says. Because as far as I'm aware, they just expanded the qualifying conditions. Before it was very hard. You had to literally have like a death, you had to be terminally ill, I think. And then now I think they just expanded it to PTSD and some other, qualifying conditions. But also, where are those dispensaries at? You know, I don't know.
It's
So,
considered, according to ChatGPT, getting a medical cannabis card in Texas is moderately accessible if you meet the criteria and can find a doctor willing to evaluate you. There's no physical card. Uh, Qualifying patients get a prescription entered into the Compassionate Use Registry of Texas, or the CURT system, by a registered physician, and dispensaries check this registry to verify eligibility when you pick up medicine. I love how we're still doing that.
The eligibility requirements are where it's at.
Yeah, to qualify for medical cannabis in Texas under the Compassionate Use Program, you have to one, be a Texas resident. That makes sense. Two, have a qualifying condition listed by state law. Conditions include epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, autism, ALS, PTSD, chronic pain, Crohn's disease, traumatic brain injury, terminal and hospice care, and other incurable neurodegenerative diseases. So what I think is interesting is at least the way that I, went about it back in 2013 before there was the whole recreational versus medical thing here in California is, you go in, I told the doctor on Venice Beach Boulevard or whatever, I was like, ow, my finger hurts. I've dislocated my fingers so many times. I feel like I'm getting, arthritis in, my mid early 20s. Please, doctor, have pity on me and
I
give
mean,
me
you
my
just had
weed
to tell them
card.
you had a migraine, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, here you
Oh,
go. Good."
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And
Um,
then, certain fee later and ka-ching, there you go. And then you can walk, 100 feet to the left and,
well, hey,
go
here
into a shop.
here's a business idea for people, where if you could go click on that Texas list of qualifying conditions expanded in 2025 right there with the arrow, right there. If people, doctors or physicians are in states that are not legal, if you have like a residency or an address in another state that is, you can then issue, again, not financial, business, or medical advice, but you could telehealth diagnose people for 30 to $50. And there you go. Who knows? I don't know. Look into it. Who sees?
That is interesting. That is interesting. So the other thing that we had talked about earlier, I know that we had this pulled up and we're ready to talk about it. In terms of the, protections approved by Congress at the end of 2025. Just a couple of the things to touch on. House of Representatives passed a spending bill containing a provision to continue protecting state medical cannabis laws from federal interference and without a separate rider that would have blocked the Trump administration from rescheduling marijuana. That's what we were talking about principally.
Hmm.
Federal marijuana rescheduling is in line with President Donald Trump's recent executive order, could have an outsized impact on Washington, D.C. by letting the city finally move forward with the legalizing of recreational cannabis sales. But there's a possible catch. We can talk about that, I guess, if you wanted to read into that. The Massachusetts State Ballot Law Commission scheduled for a hearing next week to consider a complaint alleging that an anti-marijuana campaign for an initiative to roll back the state's legislation or legalization law, quote, obtained signatures fraudulently. Shocker there, I'm sure.
Well, that's just a tactic they use everywhere and everything. And
Yeah, how's
they did that in Lubbock, Texas, when they went to decriminalize it. And even if that's one of our interviews that we had with Adam, he ran
nice.
for mayor, and he's running for more things. So if you go support him in Lubbock, and he was telling me that even if they decriminalized it, they could still send it to the city council, and the city council can then override it. And then it's no matter what, there's some form of deterrent written in the code, or there's a tactic written in where they can just appeal it. And with the signatures, they just call for an audit, which delays it at least. So they say, okay, we don't think you have 30,000 signatures when you needed 30. You only have 20. The rest are duplicates. So you need to go through and verify. And then it just takes more time and more money. And it's just like, it's like lawyering. It's like it's like a lawsuit basically. And it's just
Yeah.
frustrating because it's like, if they want something done, they do it lickety split that day. Um,
Yeah, when it comes to like the National Defense Authorization Act.
1.5 trillion, buddy. You
It's
know,
so crazy. So crazy.
you
Yeah.
know,
Um,
that's
yeah.
we're with you, people.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you haven't figured out by now, we go through the same experiences as anybody, we're just guys on the
I
internet that
just,
talk
I
into
just,
microphones.
I just want everyone to know that we're all in this together, and
Absolutely.
no matter what happens, it is a group of people that I am not in, that Phil is not in, and I'm assuming the person watching this is not in, or else you wouldn't really be watching this. Um, but yeah, it's us collectively need to take care of each other. So
Amen.
um, that's my soapbox speech for
You
today.
want to you want to get into like, fun topics, agorism, And,
No, I want to get into a fun topic. Type in pigeon delivery, New York City.
oh, I've seen this.
This is for everyone, just to lighten the mood up after that little spiel. Um, this will brighten your day, because logistically this is just pretty dope. Um, pun intended, I guess.
Hilarious. NYC Weed Dispensary pledges courier pigeon delivery service, and the twist is ruffling feathers from October 7th, 2025.
What a headline.
That is hilarious. It's a bird-brained marketing campaign. A Lux Big Apple cannabis brand or cannabis dispensary announced it would be launching a fleet of 20 courier pigeons to
Oh,
deliver
don't turn that off.
gram-sized bags to New Yorkers, but the
Slow
feathered
down.
service is totally phony. The Post has
Oh, that guy's
learned.
train wreck there. There, I want the pigeon.
Oh my God, look at that. That's
Bro, tell
amazing.
me that's not AI. That's got to be an AI pigeon.
It's got to be an AI. Like, yeah.
The warning, this is probably AI pigeon. Now, the article's not AI. The article is fully real. But logistically, like, yeah, how do you?
So funny.
That's a cannabis courier pigeon.
The
The
travel
CCP.
agency.
It's the CCP.
Birds aren't real. That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
Great, dude. You need to DM this to him and say, "Hey, have you seen this? These pigeons are birds, right?"
Yeah, right. Oh my God. So odd videos posted to social media. Only natural to explore all modalities. I mean,
So
this is
yeah.
like an old school way to do things, I suppose.
Hey, no track and trace, I guess. I don't know. Less.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how they how do they have a map or an address? Like, I don't, if it's different every time,
I don't know.
or maybe it's just like a big, great marketing campaign, which would,
Oh, the service isn't real. They said that at the top. That it's
yeah,
not. They're not actually going to do it. But
it's fun.
good
But
marketing campaign.
yeah.
That's fun. That's a
Um,
fun thing.
so yeah, just wanted to, have some fun on this, New Year's, new first podcast of the New Year's. So
So the other fun thing that we could talk about was the thing that I didn't get to totally get into yet, but I thought this was really interesting, and it came out yesterday. The article came out yesterday on News Atlas or newatlas.com. Landmark: Ancient Cannabis Enzymes Resurrected for Important New Drugs by Bronwyn Thompson. Cannabis produces blah 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 blah. Now new research has shed light on their origin story and opened the door to innovative ways of harnessing these compounds for human medicine. Researchers in the Netherlands have experimentally traced how cannabis evolved the ability to synthesize THC, CBD, and other major cannabinoid. Ooh, that's a fun new word. Cannabichromine. Oh, another major cannabinoid, CBC. Oh, okay. I've heard of CBC.
Nabochromene.
Revealing new insights of the plant's evolution and how we can harness its power. In modern cannabis varieties, the proportions of these cannabis or cannabinoids vary widely and are largely determined by the activity of corresponding synthase enzymes. The enzymes are also highly specialized products of a long evolutionary process, and today's types are far removed from those that existed millions of years ago. Using ancestral sequence reconstruction, which reconstructs ancient proteins from modern genetic data, the team resurrected cannabinoid-producing enzymes from early cannabis ancestors. When expressed in the lab, the enzymes revealed which cannabinoids they could produce and how their activity differed from modern versions. See, stuff like this is fascinating because, like, this is the kind of research that needs to be done because,
Mhm.
even if as we've talked about, like, the Ole Miss weed versus like, the LA homegrown or like, lab grown weed, the disparity in these plant varietals is like so vast. When you can get concentrates that are like 99%, THC or, whatever the, highest extractions are these days. I'm surprised you can't get
Mhm.
100% of something, but, the disparity. But then to research like, okay, if this plant has been used throughout history from way ancient times, like in Chinese medicine, in just Eastern medicine in general, and up through biblical times, through the medieval, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What kind of weed were they using? How
Organic for sure.
well, because they didn't have there was no
That's what I
GMO
mean. Like
weed back in the
that was
day.
as organic as you're gonna get. Like
Yeah.
no pesticides, no, you just had like natural sun and water.
Yeah.
Um,
So we'll do a Brett recommendation and just read the last two paragraphs. The team also found that reconstructed ancestral enzymes were easier to produce in microorganisms such as yeast cells rather than modern day types, which mean they can be harnessed to synthesize cannabinoids more efficiently. This raises the possibility of producing rare cannabinoids without relying on plant cultivation. That's interesting, but also I don't know how I feel about that given all the other weird GMO stuff that we've ever talked about with implications for both research and drug development. Through rational engineering of these ancestors, we designed hybrid enzymes which allowed identifying key amino acid mutations underlying the functional evolution of cannabinoid oxidocyclases. The team wrote, ancestral and hybrid enzymes also displayed unique activities and proved to be easier to produce heterologously uh, than their extant counterparts. Overall, this study contributes to the understanding of the origin, evolution, and molecular mechanisms of cannabinoid oxidocyclases,
that's
which
a lot of big
opens.
words.
I know this was written by a scientist.
Yes, and that's why they don't write pills.
Which opens new perspectives for breeding, biotechnological, and medical applications. The study was published in Plant Biotechnology Journal and the source is the research place out of the Netherlands. So I just thought that was fascinating. It's just something like, that's kind of the exciting frontier and what could potentially start to come, stateside domestically in terms of how all this research stuff happens. What are we researching cannabis for? What's the, end goal of what we're trying to discover and find out? Like, obviously, I think there's been pretty good research around like, PTSD, pain management, cancer treatment, et cetera. But, what are the other applications? And, I'm not so
Pretty
married
big
to the
application.
positive aspects that, I'm completely dismissive of all the negative potential side effects that this plant has.
Yeah.
But like, what are the pitfalls and shortcomings and potential negative implications of, a broader, acceptance and application of the plant as a treatment methodology?
Well, it's like, okay, if the government says, well, not all the plants are good, these ones are dangerous. Well, okay, then why do you get to have them then? Like why
Right.
do you get to all that poppy fields in Iraq and Afghanistan and
Yeah.
like what I didn't, you know what I mean?
Taliban doesn't
Like
like poppy plants.
they
Taliban
don't
doesn't. No,
they
no,
didn't
no.
want them.
Nope.
So
They had eradicated like most
right,
of them from my
right.
understanding
And
before
so
we invaded.
that's a whole different
Rabbit hole.
rabbit hole. But yeah,
Research the British East India Company.
right, sure. Um
Dope Inc.
Dope Inc. Yeah, nice. Sick references, bro.
Thanks.
So yeah, I mean, they want just control of it. They know the science, they know what it does, they know the potential. They knew back in the 70s,
Yep.
so um, it's pretty much what they're doing is like taxing everybody. So if you going back to the raising the taxes on, per location from like 150 to 20,000, I mean, there are people that can afford that. They're called big pharmaceutical multinational companies. That's the only people that can afford it.
Hmm.
So if they pass that, they're not killing it, they're monopolizing it um,
Yep.
from the start because they're not going to, you know, and okay, here's the thing. If a monopoly naturally takes form, like let's say Amazon was a normal company, not like a government sponsored one. Like let's say a normal company grew and just acquired everything. Okay, that's capitalism. And then it became a monopoly. Okay, then you have to break it up. But if you start out as a monopoly, that's not capitalism. That's controlled capitalism. That's not letting the free market determine, hey, here's 10 small farms. Everybody likes these two or three, so they grow faster than the other ones. So it's just like craft beer. Like you have Bud Lights and Natty Lights and all Miller Lights and all these international brands that are quantity, but then you have local regional beers and brews that are quality for different palate tastes. And there's no difference than in cannabis if you're looking
Hmm.
at recreational aside from medical.
Sure. Yeah. So another one of the things that I thought was interesting, just kind of scrubbing through this other article, from NPR and, rest in peace, public broadcasting. They just voted to dissolve their institution. It's been around since the early 60s. So it will be sunsetting. What is that?
Sunset.
Sunsetting? But, in terms of the content that they're still putting out, cannabis firms would still get tax relief, but credit cards would remain forbidden. Um, so this guy, Sam Brill, CEO of Ascend Wellness Holdings, a multi-state dispensary company, says rescheduling could bring a cascade of positive changes to this industry, but one benefit could come immediately, he says. The biggest thing that happens overnight is the 280E, the restrictive punitive tax code that is set on us, would no longer apply to marijuana businesses. Like other businesses, Brill's company is obligated to pay taxes on income, but because their core product is a Schedule 1 drug, the IRS says that under the IRS code section 280E, they're blocked from claiming common tax deductions, exposing them to a higher effective tax rate. So, the fact that they get a tax break based on the executive order and the potential and the rescheduling is, again, kind of a net positive aspect to it. But I guess they're still not going to be allowed to accept credit cards, which is also interesting here because like,
That
the dispensaries here can accept debit cards. I guess they can't accept credit cards
Well, what they
necessarily
do
still, but
there,
some do.
they do pass-throughs, so they basically go through an out of country bank. A lot of them go through Canada and then come right back.
That makes sense.
Um, but because it's legal in California, however, the reason why credit cards can't is because they're underwritten by banks, right? So
Right.
banks are federal controlled things. So the second you touch a Schedule One federally illegal drug, they can audit anything they want. So they could then that gives them a reason if they want
Yeah.
to deep dive into your banking stuff because you then touched a federal and if they wanted to, they could probably seize your bank.
Yeah. Wild. Well, I mean, like we've already been talking about, man, I think this year holds, a lot of positive potential in regards to the cannabis industry changing, federally speaking, states are obviously going to have their own, stuff to manage and legislate and decide how they're going to govern and blah, 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 blah. But, I think overall we're moving in a good direction for, the whole of the full spectrum of the considerations. Um, so I'm excited to see kind of where things head. I know that Bobby Kennedy and the HHS and the, whole uh, kind of the restructuring of the vaccine program, which also just another plug for my own stuff. The film that's coming out in a couple weeks, I think 2 weeks from today, actually. It's called Plague of Corruption, and it is all about the corruption of the pharmaceutical industries, as well as touching on a lot of the COVID-19 vaccine issues, especially having to do with how the military personnel was required to take an
Mhm.
experimental genetic, you know, experiment.
Mhm.
And so. Interesting stuff. It was a long, long project, long awaited for a while. Glad
Congrats.
it didn't die, but exciting to see it finally come to light and be able to get out in the world. There was like a little bit of a leak, a couple weeks ago, end of December, I think, that actually had a decent amount of people get to see it. I think when it was up on YouTube and people could get it, it had like over 60,000 views or something like that in like
Nice.
a couple days. So it definitely made the rounds. We had this guy, Sam Shoemate, featured in it.
Nice.
He tweeted about it. He was actually a guy that got interviewed on Sean Ryan not too long ago about the
Very
guy in
cool.
the Tesla truck because he had been messaging with this guy back and forth or whatever. That's a whole different rabbit hole to go down. So
Mhm.
I won't spare everybody that story. But yeah, man, exciting stuff to come. Hopefully, I'll have one. The missing persons documentary project that I'm working on with Dave Politis should be out end of March. And then another UFO project that I've been working on should probably be out sometime closer to the summer. So hopefully by summertime, I got a couple more movies out in the world. So yeah, man, happy to see work finally hit the public
Yeah.
sphere rather than stand on a shelf.
For public eyes only,
Right.
So
That's
no, that's
right.
cool. Congratulations on everything. Great podcast. I'm excited to be back for the new year, 2026. Stay tuned going forward. We're going to start to try to do lives, maybe a couple times a month. Who knows? We'll see how it
We'll
goes,
see.
once or twice. That's our 2026 New Year's resolution to everyone watching, is that at some point this year, breaking news will be going live some places. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Hell yeah.
all right. Well, check them out. Give them a follow, like, share, and subscribe. And thanks again for watching. We appreciate you all. And until next time, stay blessed and don't forget to tip your bud tenders.
Peace.